All right. Welcome everyone to this webinar. I have Brittany Ping here with Ledgeview Commercial Partners. They are a company that manages properties and deals with rentals. They're our go-to at Porcupine Real Estate. We've had a lot of great experience with them. And also with me is Melanie Gibson, fellow agent at Porcupine Real Estate. And I am Zach Hodgson, also Porcupine Real Estate. Thanks for coming. So, Brittany, you work a lot in the rental space. Can you basically give us an outline of what things are looking like right now in the rental space?
Yeah, so we are a property management brokerage. So we also do some investment buy, sell, but my experience in the space has been as the director of property management for about 325 units. So I mostly work in the Manchester Concord corridor. So my experience is a little bit tailored to that, but I kind of have like a house, like this is my favorite part of housing, is to talk about what's happening in that space. So in general, New Hampshire has seen a low supply of housing in both the buy, sell, and in the rental market. And so that's driven a lot of things, especially during COVID, in regards to the price and the availability of rentals. But I think we'll talk a little bit more about that. Our rental market looks different than if you're moving from the Midwest or maybe the Southwest. We have a lot of your triplex, the triple deckers, as they're called. We have more of that very industrial revolution level housing. That's the bulk of our rental housing throughout most of the state, versus something like a condo or a single family home. Not that those don't exist, but they only take up about 30 to 40%.
Right. So, in terms of making the move, expanding upon the point that Brittany made, where inventory is exceptionally low, we're seeing a lot of people who, meanwhile, they're bidding on all these properties, and it really makes sense to have their foot in the door in New Hampshire, whether that's going on a month-to-month lease, whether that's bunking up with a friend, or finding someone who would be willing to let you stay just momentarily while you're making these offers. Because chances are, if you're looking to buy, you're probably going to have to make many offers. So being able to be here and to attend the open houses and attend the showings, especially on very short notice, because sometimes these properties go in a matter of days. So just having that flexibility is worth it in on itself. And having to and paying even a little bit of a premium just to be here, especially since a lot of the times we do see inspections being waived too. So being there and being able to inspect for yourself, or it can really help in making the assurance much higher in yourself, and also the competitiveness of your offer as well.
Yeah, and I'd say part of the benefit of making the move and renting first is that instead of just saying like, oh, I'm gonna say I want to move to New Hampshire and I think I want to end up in this region, and therefore you're looking at 17, 18, 24 different towns, right? If you make the move and you're kind of firmly planted, you can go visit things before you start your search and say like, oh, I would never really want to be in these 10 towns, or maybe I want to be farther north than what I think that I want to be. When I moved 12 years ago, the thought was like, you start in Manchester. Everyone started in Manchester. They lived in Manchester for a year, and then they found where they wanted to go. Now I've stuck here like in a 0.2 mile radius of where I first rented from. I love this part of Manchester. It's super appealing to me, but I come from a city, right? So I love the deep urban piece of it. So I think that the recommendation of like, hey, move, rent, whether that's getting an Airbnb for a long period of time, or like you said, renting somebody's room, or a traditional rental of like a 6, 8, 12-month lease, it gives you the time to explore the state and really see like what's the best fit for me and my family. And then when you are really searching, I don't do the single family buyer side much, but it is like an 18, 20 offers you could do before you find a home. And that might be
That is very true.
Yeah, I think that was like the average stat that just came out, was like 18 offers before close or something. That's a long time. And so making that intent to say like, oh, I'll find a place to rent, or I'll do a short-term rental. You're paying a little bit of a premium, but you're already intending to pay a mortgage. So having that opportunity to really be in one space and keep looking is really important.
So also on the topic of the different regions of New Hampshire, what you can do is you can go to www.nhrrelocationguide.com, where we have a list of resources and overviews of the different regions of New Hampshire. And also we have local guides for all the different regions, where you can really get a good idea of, say, the Merrimack Valley area or the Seacoast, the Upper Valley, North Country, Monadnock, to get a feel of what you can expect there in terms of meetups, restaurants, attractions, tourism. It's something. It's if you're not able to come and travel and see for yourself, but we definitely recommend coming here and exploring, especially since the state is so compact. You can go from the top to bottom in 3.5 hours. So you can really make a whole day out of it and just explore. Check out the Lakes region, checks out the Seacoast, go attend Taproom Tuesday in Manchester. You can really get to know the area and the locals and form those connections, which also would help you potentially find someone who would rent out a room, or maybe they have a rental, or they know someone who has a rental, or maybe you'll run into Brittany or Matt Ping from Ledgeview Commercial, and they'll have something. So yeah, that networking in person is very, very important.
I feel like it was we do an event in the fall with the apple orchards, right? So apple picking season, apple cidering, apple cider donuts. It's a super excellent fall event. And we had a few families that had come to PorcFest, and then they showed up and they were like, things are happening in the fall. Excellent. I'm going to join families. And both of them ended up, one ended up buying a home with PRE, and one ended up renting with Ledgeview Commercial right from that event. They were like, all right, and we need to stay here. And they were both situated within like the next 4 weeks, whether they were moving into a multi or they were, renting in a multifamily. It's one of those things. It's a handshake state. Like, so it's still a handshake state, even if you're, intending to move, having that eye contact and saying like, hey, I want to be in this area. Can you help me find a space? It works.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see that people, when they come to visit, it only takes 1 or 2 visits for them to say, okay, I belong here. That actually makes sense here. Like, I have people who understand me. I have people who share my values and my moral compass. And it just, you see, as soon as someone comes, it's almost always they end up moving. It's very rare that I've seen someone who comes here and it's not what they were expecting. Actually, only once from my memory, where I've seen hundreds of people who have come, and sometimes it can take longer depending on their circumstances, but at the end of the day, they almost all end up coming here. So if you haven't made that visit, I highly recommend you come and visit, especially with PorcFest coming up too.
Yeah.
That's your golden opportunity to make an excuse to come visit.
Or my first visit was after PorcFest. So everyone's kind of like riding that like social high. And so we ended up coming out the week after. And so we showed up at Taproom Tuesday, and everyone was like, why weren't you there? And we were like, we didn't even know it was a thing. We're just visiting. So that was really fun because everyone's kind of like, you missed a great event. And so, that little bit of like the FOMO appeal too, or like, we did these amazing things, or I know people moving next week because of it. So I don't think there's a bad time to visit, and visiting after the big events, maybe if you can't make them for your schedule, still 100% worth it.
Yeah, if you look on fsp.org/calendar, you'll see that there's an event basically every single day across the state. So you could and since the state is so small, you could go to the Shell in Rollinsford, and then go out from there and go to an event at the Quill in Manchester. And then you could go down to a crypto meetup. And then, I mean, you can do so much in one day just because the state is so compact and there's so much going on across the state. So that is something really magical about New Hampshire, where we do have these libertarian and liberty friendly meetups everywhere, constantly. So that sense of community is very, very strong here.
Zach, can I
Which,
jump in with a question?
sure.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat. What's the best source of rental home listings, especially outside of the 3 big cities?
I'll go to Brittany for that one.
So I really like Zillow. Zillow has transitioned to an aggregator model, and they also do paid advertising. So you'll see like the large complexes at the very top, but they also will pull in listings from any other source towards the bottom. So if you have a little patience and can use the scroll model with Zillow, it's a really great. Apartments.com is really similar. Craigslist is very tried and true. You have to remember New Hampshire's a lot of rural small towns. So your smaller town, Craigslist is excellent. And then getting access to the MLS, having an actual agent assist you with seeing what listings have been posted for rentals by other agents is really great. So I would say, hey, your big shots like Zillow, apartments.com, don't discount things like Craigslist, and then having an agent assist you. The agent, usually in that kind of relationship, the agent would ask the list agent for a co-broke. It would be listed on the MLS. So you're not paying an agent. The person who's listing is paying the agent to help you with a rental.
And we do have agents at Porcupine Real Estate who would be open to helping you with the rental as well. Let's see. All right, so some tips and tricks to finding this rental. So let's see. Brittany, do you have any tips and tricks to people?
It slid really fast. So New Hampshire has a vacancy law that states, hey, everyone who is in a lease, you have a 30-day to break the lease. Like a 30-day written notice to vacate is required. Most leasing companies require 60 days notice to vacate. So really, anyone in our environment isn't going to know when you have a vacancy for at least 60 days. And so if you're looking immediate turnover, calling right now for a July vacancy, I might not know exactly what's about to happen. So that 60 to 45 day mark is when you should be calling around to the areas. Maybe if you saw an old listing, hey, random broker, it looks like you've got some rentals that you had last July, or I like the area that you're in. Do you have anything coming up? So it's kind of like that networking that we talked about in person, you can also do online, because Zillow will show you what just rented. It'll show you what might be coming. But really that 45-day mark is kind of the sweet spot to start looking, hey, I want to move. What do you have coming up? And then if you're more of like my class, which is like that B or C class housing, so we're not luxury housing, we're in the triple deckers. Really, about 30 days before you want to move is about the time to be reaching out to us. So your luxury, your single family, your condo, you're going to want to be looking about 45 days. Anything else really about 30 days, you should be out searching, because they're going to tell you what's coming available in the next 30 days. It's also knowing what rent should look like. If it looks too good to be true, it might just be. But also we'll do one snippet from this really awesome survey that just came out. It's the 2023 Housing Needs Assessment Survey. It talked about the cost of someone with a mortgage that's doing rentals is about $1,800, and the cost of someone without a mortgage is about $764. Like, I remember that $764 because I was like, that's ridiculous, right? But that's property taxes per month, water, sewer usage. So somebody with that low barrier cost might not be wanting to get market rent, but they might be pickier. So if it's too good to be true and they offer you to move in tomorrow, it might be a scam. So understanding what market rent should look like in your unit. So Manchester is more expensive than most of the state. The Seacoast, the Lebanon area, that Hanover, what's that called? What's that portion called? It's just stuck from my head.
Oh, the Upper Valley.
Upper Valley, thank you. Upper Valley is a little bit more expensive, and right along the southern border, like Salem, is more expensive than Nashua. But for a studio right in the state, you're talking about $950 a month. In Manchester, about $1125. So just kind of understanding where should these units be at. And if they're not giving you a whole lot of information in the listing, it doesn't mean it's shady. It's the handshake state. People want you to reach out in the way that they ask you. And really, again, that 45 days kind of a perfect, thing right there. And then somebody like my brokerage would say, hey, give us another few weeks to reach back out. I'll know what's coming up for your move-in date in 30 days.
Just to add on to that, you'll see sometimes in the paper, you'll see rental listings just in the paper, and they won't be anywhere else. So it's word of mouth. It's in the paper. It's so having those having those connections to people who talk to these people and network with other agents is really important to making sure that you're really maximizing your reach to someone who's in the state and actually seeing the stuff. So not all of them are listed on the internet.
No, and it's also that, like, we're in political season, so forgive me because that's my other fun hobby. It's like the transfer station, right? Like that's the number one social hub in a lot of communities. And that's where a lot of that comes through. Oh, my tenant's moving out. Oh my gracious, did you know? Especially with our low vacancy rates, anything that, like, if you're telling my friend, your friend that might live in that area, hey, if you hear anything that comes up, let me know. Because things do move quickly. And you're right, it doesn't always happen online.
Especially in these rural communities, you'll see that the people who they own these units, they may be, older, they may not really care about technology, or really they know they can fill it, just someone who's local, so they'll just keep it in the paper. So yeah, it's good to have those connections.
Yeah, it's a benefit of renting too, right? Because you can try to be in that community. And so the same thing when someone's looking to sell, if you're in the community and that feels good, you're already there.
All right, so this slide here, where to rent. This shows the breakdown of the different counties in New Hampshire. As you can see, Carroll County, that's going to be the largest amount for single families. Generally, as you get more rural in these areas, there's less dense housing, where you're going to have like 3-4 acres in between some of these houses by town regulation, and it's less apartments, less multifamilies. But as you're in that Merrimack Valley strip from, say, Concord down to Nashua, that's really where you're going to see a lot of those the multifamilies, the condos, all the more dense housing.
Yeah, so that's Hillsborough County is where Manchester is, which just shows you that Manchester is like this blob in the middle of rural. You don't think about it that way, but like our suburbs are very, very sprawl. And then Merrimack County is Concord. So that's also kind of interesting because that's Concord, Pennacook, a little bit more that's very industrial but led along the river. So that was interesting to me, at least from my perspective, like, oh, the 57 and 64%.
Yeah, just from my just anecdotally, I feel like most people usually land in the Manchester area just because it's pretty central and they can explore a bit more and see what works best for them. And it's also there's a lot of events going on in Manchester, a lot of meetups, so it's very convenient and central to attend those. And also there's a lot of jobs in the Manchester area rather than in some of these remote areas where you may have to work remote or drive considerable distances to find a job for your skill sets. So that's really the central hub, in my opinion, for landing here, at least initially.
I agree. I mean, we see a decent amount, especially movers with the Free State Project, who will come into Manchester for a short period of time and decide this is not for me, but it was a great place to start. Right? I ended up in Londonderry, or I ended up way up north in Coas, or I ended up, in Auburn or in Keene, or but I love it because I'm an hour from everything. Like that's the reason why I stayed. Right? I'm an hour from anything I want to do. It's not I'm an hour from the mountains. I'm an hour from Massachusetts. I can go into Boston.
The
and see-
beach.
Yeah, I'm an hour from Hampton Beach. It's amazing. It's great.
All right. So on that note, is there anything else that you would like to add, Brittany or Melanie or anyone else, or any questions at all?
Yeah, so what I think we had one of the slides was like the state with the vacancy rates. I don't know if that got skipped over.
Oh, let's see. No, I don't see that slide here.
That's all right. So one of the things that we didn't talk about at all is the vacancy rate. So it can seem very daunting because New Hampshire does have a 2%.
Oh, actually,
vacancy rate.
it's a slide back here. There we go. I believe this might be. No, that's not it. Nope, it's not here.
That's okay. That's fine. It is a low vacancy rate. And so just like when you're looking to buy a home, it's a similar kind of tenacity that you have to have, right? I'm looking, it's building relationships, just like your agents, you know, that's why you hire an agent when you're buying a home. They have the relationships like, oh, this just came on, let's jump right now. You know, most of the time in a rental, it needs to be you that takes that initiative. Because it is very low. So here in Manchester, we're actually below 1% vacancy rate again. So it is difficult. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but just knowing that it might be a little bit of work. Ledgeview Commercial, thankfully, is gonna have soon kind of like a tenant, you know, how to, right? Just like you have your local guides, you know, what should you be looking for? What are you looking for in regards to what you need to bring to the table? So just making sure you're prepared, you know, having your income statements, having your bank statement. We accept crypto reserves as proof of income, right? Like, how can you pay for a rental is the number one most important thing here in New Hampshire. We have a very low unemployment rate, so most people in the state are employed. And so when someone's looking at you to move into a rental, they want to know, are you employed? How are you going to pay for it? So if you're coming from out of state, sorry, bug right in there. You know, do you have a job offer? Do you have savings? What is it that will differentiate you from that perspective? And just keeping an eye out, and not being discouraged, because you might, it's a lot less, but you might see, you know, 8 or 10 units, or you might choose to apply with a company like ours that your application is good for all of your units, but the vacancy rate is very low. So like right now in our brokerage, we have 2 residential vacancies. Oh, I'm sorry, we have a third. We have 3 vacancies listed, which is less than 1%. So it is a small amount. We don't have a lot coming up. That doesn't mean that it's not some, it's just not what you would expect from a healthy market. Which from an agent standpoint would be 2 to 3%, from an industry standpoint would be 5%. So it's going to take a little bit longer than you might like, but it's just as worth it in regards to buying a home.
Thank you, Brittany. Does anyone have any other questions or any at all?
I have a thing that I can talk about. Maybe
Sure.
when you're renting. No, this is fun for me. This is what I do. This is what I like. One of the things that's scary is with renting in New Hampshire. So I moved from Indianapolis, which is a super similar cost of living to Manchester. Right now, obviously, I gained a lot back because I don't pay income taxes. I don't pay sales tax, and the growth opportunities in my career, I literally doubled my income in 2 years. So, you know, the opportunities here advanced me a lot faster, even though I was paying the same like grocery costs, the same rent cost as a city of 1.2 million in a state of 1.2 million. One of the things that is stranger here is understanding what it means when you don't have utilities included. So if you rent a single family home, they can make you pay for water, sewer. If you rent in a non-metered unit, they cannot. So most like condos, multiplexes, you're not paying the water. Our gas here, I think, is relatively like a normal price. It's a little bit, we fluctuate based on the winters because of the cost, but electricity here is a lot higher. So also just paying attention where maybe it's a lower rent because you have electric heat and what that means. And so I think that's part of the whole rent and bundle, is it's not fear mongering to say like, hey, be aware of our utilities and how they fluctuate during the year, because it is more expensive to run utilities in New Hampshire in the winter. And the utility companies get these special grants from the state to raise our rates. And then if you are someone that is used to living in a perfectly climate controlled environment, you know, especially if you're saying, hey, I'm renting as a step to own in New Hampshire, you might look a lot different, right? You might have a parlor heater or an older style heating system that definitely does not, you know, it supplements your entire home. You have to keep all your doors open. And central AC is not a real big thing in a lot of our rentals either because of the cost of electricity. So just kind of understanding those questions too. So the expectations of like what I had from moving from Indianapolis, even though it was the same rental price point, it looked different. Apartments were bigger, but just kind of understanding what it would mean to, you know, my electric would mean it's a higher bill and I have space heaters and I have an AC. And so that's one of the reasons why I think, even though we've been, COVID shot up rents about 56% in about a year. That's one of the reasons why I think it's kind of leveling out, and maybe we won't see a big spike in the next few years. It's just because, you know, we have to account for the utility rents or utility rates. But that's one of the things that maybe people don't think about when they're renting. Most of our electricity comes from natural gas. So about 50% of it comes from natural gas to create electricity. So that's why our rates are so high. So it's not really scary, but just something to think about when you're renting, what it means on your overall rent rate. That was my cool thing to think about.
Those are definitely some very good points. Definitely very, very important points. Because I mean, I know me personally, like utilities was something that I wasn't really putting into forefront, like for myself. So that's definitely something to account for before you sign a lease.
Or just asking, and you know, like we approximate what we think it would happen. That's part of our income qualification process. And so, you know, just saying like, how much do you think on average this does, you know, for gas and electric? Kind of get that idea.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in chat. Anyone have any questions at this point?
Not on my end.
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, I'm just wondering, how common is it to be able to find a month-to-month or a short-term lease while looking for a house to buy? Because that would be our situation, and with two pets. So our short-term or month-to-month with two animals, is that pretty common, or I mean, is that really reaching?
So it's not necessarily what I do. And the reason why is that anything less than a 30-month lease is subject to room and meals tax here in New Hampshire. But there are a lot, so especially because we have the two major, this is Manchester specific, so I'll give you that caveat, right? So we have the Manchester, we have the VA here in Manchester for the state. And then we also have Elliott Hospital and CMC, which is Catholic Medical Center, which is the other hospital. And so because of that, we get a lot of traveling nurses. And so there are a lot of furnished apartments or short-term apartment rentals that are based for that kind of travel. And so they do accept more of your like traditional family model, right? So nurses have pets and they want to travel with them, or they want to travel with their spouses and their entire family. And so I'd say here in Manchester, it's a little bit more common to find. I think they're going to be on traditional models like VRBO or Airbnb, or, you know, something like that, a short-term rental model. And And Zach, didn't you just have a client that just did that? They were on Airbnb while they were around searching.
That wasn't me in my case,
okay.
but I've definitely seen it done.
Yeah. And people here are pretty dog friendly. New Hampshire has a lot of dogs. It's like 68% of the state owns at least one dog. So it's a common request. Our insurance companies don't have crazy dog breed restrictions, things like that I've seen. So I would just say kind of stick to those more traditional models, or even there are summer or winter rentals based on, like, if you're in more touristy areas. So those are used to, kind of that 6 to 12 week rental period. And again, those are more accommodating to traditional families because that's what they're looking for to stay long term.
Yeah, so to add on to that, a lot of these rentals, especially up in like the Conway area or anywhere among the upper areas of the state, there's a lot of short-term rentals for ski season or the leaf peepers and these major touristy seasons. So a lot of the times you'll find that they'll be available or pretty vacant during times where it's not so busy. So you might be able to get like a few months, potentially negotiate a deal with them where they might have a lot of vacant space just because of the less desirable season.
I don't think 2 dogs should be too off-putting.
Thank
I say
you.
there's someone with 2 dogs, and a lot of our tenants have dogs because I just saw the statistic, which is why it's in my head. It's 68% of New Hampshire are dog owners. So most people, if they're not personally dog owners, they're very familiar in the renting space of animals.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I love dogs.
I have a cat and a dog. But my dog is
you
big.
have 1 cat, 1 dog. Okay.
1 cat, 1 dog. And my dog is big. He's a lab. And so I'm seeing small dogs okay, but not.
So like our brokerage calls them small dogs, but I'll take anything up to 60 pounds. Like over 60 pounds is technically what we consider large.
Yes.
So like
He's large.
yes, a lab would be large. It kind of joke like it's a very much a handshake state, right? Like kind of that renter statement, like, hey, I have people that add pictures of their animals to the rental applications. Like that's a common occurrence. Like, hey, this is Buzz. Look at my cute. This is Benji, and he's really nice.
Yeah.
And this is, Noodle, my cat. It's absolutely part of that that handshake mentality. And it's a very dog friendly state. Our campgrounds aren't very dog friendly apparently, but the rest of the state is. Our state campgrounds. I'll do that caveat.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? David, Deborah?
I've also had people that have moved with us. So again, that having renewals happen in deep winter. So winters or late fall, early winter, early spring, those are harder times for renting. And so asking like, hey, would you do a 6-month lease, right? Doing a 6-month lease in October makes a lot of sense because then it's vacant right now. I've had people do, a 6-month lease and then they broke their lease. So if your lease break contract is filled out in your lease, you don't have to tell that owner like, well, I might only stay 2 months, right? But it might be worth it for you to rent and say, I've got 6 months to find something. Maybe I find it in 2, but I'm just losing my security deposit, or, I'm paying 1 month additional rent penalty. So like, I'm not saying like, hey, intentionally screw someone over. That's not it, right? But being willing, if it's in the contract, a break that you're willing to pay, it might be worth it to rent for someone more traditional like me, right? Who doesn't want to deal with room and meals tax, but wants to do a traditional lease. Just to say, oh, I would take that penalty if I found the house that I want to move into sooner.
Okay, that's great information. Thank you.
Yeah, and if they're not explicit about their lease break, that's fine too. But it's one of those honesty things, like, hey, I might be looking for a house earlier than the 6 month. What would it look like to break the lease? And they might just be like, I don't want to touch you with a 10-foot pole. Whereas with me, I can say like, It's written in our lease. It's the very first, it's, you know, before you even get to the terms and conditions, it's just right there. We
And one
want
thing to
be
keep in
honest.
mind is they can take you several months potentially to actually, get a house under contract and close on it. Closing usually takes about 30, 45 days. 30 is usually pretty common. But just getting under contract, it can take potentially 10 plus offers before you finally get under contract. So starting as early as possible is really advantageous. Because even if you are coming in with strong offers, someone may come in stronger. And I've seen that many times where people, they'll go like 5% ish over asking, they'll waive a lot of things, and they just keep losing. And it's just a matter of you're just got to keep throwing out the cards, and eventually one will stick.
Yeah.
So yeah, patience is definitely a virtue.
Patience is a virtue.
Absolutely.
That's it. That's the housing. That's the new housing model in New Hampshire. Patience is a virtue. And it's easier to find, like Zach had mentioned, shorter term rentals or off-season rentals in the areas that experience that, right? So, somewhere around Loon Mountain, somewhere near the lakes, someone near, those kind of things. They are much more common. I just don't want to deal with rooms and meals tax. No thanks.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it's a 7.5, is it?
I think it's like 7.75. It just got lowered.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, it just got lowered.
It's still something I'd rather not pay.
You just have to create a new ID with the state. It's fine.
I do have another question if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay. So our situation would possibly be my husband getting a job there and having to, being offered a job and then moving, probably would need to go out, pretty quickly to try to find a rental. What would your recommendation be, like, to be able to do that in a short term? Because it would be, hey, here's a job offer. We accept the job. Oh, now we need to go find a place to rent and then, sell this house here. What would your recommendation be to be able to do that efficiently?
So it's like, I had friends do this, right? So it's like step one, can he find a physical space to stay? Worst case, right? He's just coming out without you, right? So they planned for all the contingencies. Does he have a place to go start a job, right? Number two, then can we find everything that we need to move as a family, or to move me with my husband if we don't have children or whatever. And so once you've got that offer letter, that's proof of employment, right? Especially that's pretty much accepted. And then just start looking, and can people do video tours? And hey, we're going to be there on this day. Can we line it up? Because it's low vacancy, like, we don't really have to do weekend showings, right? It's a benefit to all of our leasing agents, not necessarily a benefit who's trying to move. Okay, can you do a virtual tour with me? Do you have a video I can watch online, and then maybe I can call you and we can set up a 15-minute virtual showing where I just ask you questions. So there's ways around those kind of questions of, can I be present for a showing? So especially like for us, our practices, if you haven't seen it in person, we try to get you here before you move into it, right? So at least you kind of get a view. Or we have some really amazing before and after transformations because we work with 120-year-old plus housing. Maybe we've never turned the unit. And so what you might have seen the unit at, 20 days before you're moving, and when it's move-in ready, look totally different. So we'll try to get you in person between the two. But I think, number one, securing work while you're out here, securing work, touring the areas as much as you can. If you're doing that all virtually, amazing, great job. What does he do for a living? I want to know. So, while he's out working, just touring the areas, about where he works, kind of driving. What does it look like if I drive 20 minutes? Oh, what city am I in? Okay, turn around. go back kind of into the city, go another 20 minutes on another road. Where am I at? What city is that? And then if you're out here again for signing the job offer or something like that, can you go to the Shell? Can you go to the tap room? Can you find a space to where at least like, hey, I'm held, at least in the short term, it might just be a room. And that's actually how, when we moved here, I lived in a bedroom for 12 months. 12 months was much longer than I wanted to rent just a bedroom, but that's how it worked out. And we were okay. We were joking about before it went live, like, we're selling our home, and so we're going to rent back for a few months. And then I was like, what are we going to do next? I don't know. It's like a game. Like, we can do anything, right? We lived in a bedroom for a year. I can do anything. It's like a bad improv game. It's an opportunity for adventure. But I would say if you have a job offer, take advantage of when you're out here to look, network, secure, like, hey, worst case, can I sleep on this couch before I get everybody here? And then, you know, he can be looking on the weekends or at night. Can you find places that do virtual tours? And really knowing kind of who to connect with in what's commutable distance. And honestly, finding out what's commutable distance, because some things that might look really close on the map in New Hampshire, you can't get from here to there. That's a real thing. Like, how do I get to that city? Because it looks like it should be easy and there's no roads. You have to go all the way up and then over down, or things like that.
It can look like it's 30 minutes, but with all the back roads, it ends up being like 2 hours. I know very well from experience.
Yeah, you said, oh, it's only 3 hours from top to bottom. I was like, that's 93. That's a lie. That can be, because sometimes it takes 4 hours to get from here to here.
Oh, I mean, it depends on where you're going. Exactly.
All right, thank you so
You're
much.
Move. Does he have a job?
No, it's job search is happening. So we
All
were
right.
there last month. We were there in March.
Okay.
So we did tour around Manchester, and we went to 2 or 3 open houses. We did the commute from, like, what would it look like from outside of Boston? What would it look like going at the commute time and coming back at commute time? We went up to the Portsmouth area. So we did a little bit of that in a short amount of time last March.
Awesome.
But in the search right now for the job. So if it happens, you know, it'll be kind of quick to try to find a rental, and then I'll be getting this house ready to go.
And any company too might have leads as well. You might say like, oh, what? Because New Hampshire is, and we've been historically low in employment. I saw a graphic of, this isn't the housing. It's a really cool thing. The 2023 Housing Needs Survey that just got released from New Hampshire Housing. And it shows the unemployment, and we've been like teetering on basically 2%. And then it was like COVID and it went up to 16. And then it dropped down pretty fast back to about that 2%. So we are insourcing workers. That is absolutely what's happening. So you're right, it will happen quick. What does he do?
Biotech.
Okay, welcome to Manchester. Yes. They just got the big grant for the Army and DECA. It just happened. They just got awarded it. They're hiring a director of the initiative on Indeed, because I stock jobs for fun. My background's HR, so that's why I'm being nosy. like, what does he do? What industry? But biotech is exploding in Manchester. So they got one of the Build Back Better grants. Biotech corridor in the Mill Yards.
Thank you.
Come to Manchester. Give me an offer letter. Give me a call. I got you.
That's where we stayed. We stayed in Manchester. My husband went to he was actually at the Liberty Forum. He went.
Yeah.
So we did enjoy Manchester. I really did.
I love it, but I'm from a city. I'm from a city of 300,000. So like when people are like, this is a big bad city, I'm like, okay.
Oh.
Well, to us country bumpkins, it's a big city, but really there's only like 100,000 people living there. So
no, 115.
115.
Yeah, I didn't believe it either.
Well, it was having a snowstorm the day we got there, so we didn't see a lot of people out.
Because look
Yeah,
at
that
just look
snowstorm was
down.
brutal.
It was really rough. It was really rough. But that's okay. Where do you live? If you don't mind me asking, I'm sorry.
We're in California outside of Sacramento.
Oh yeah. Oh, welcome. Yes. Okay. I get the lake effect. I got the lake effects growing up. So it was like, snowstorm, can't keep me down. So for me, it was like, it's actually better weather here, but probably not.
We enjoyed it. It was nice. I mean, but we were there for 3 days, so.
Well, it's been a beautiful 70s recently, so I mean, it's not always it's going to be, below freezing and crazy storms. It's really depends on the year, the season.
And it's where you live too. My favorite, that big snowstorm, was it a few days after, because it was the town election day. And like Manchester got 6 inches. I was like, this is ridiculous. They canceled everything. And then Pelham got like 3 feet. It's not that far. Like not a huge distance away, like 3 feet. Insane. We're talking about weather. That's New Hampshire #1 topic.
That's all very good information.
Especially with the elevation differences in the mountains and the coast, and even like Winnipesaukee and all the lakes. I mean, it can really it can be quite a difference just going between an hour down the road. It can be completely different. So it's it can really differ. You'll see the coast, for example, could be a lot different than inland, just because of that the ocean there. So
I like Manchester because we have the valley.
Mhm.
Where like everything, I always say, like the ocean sucks it up or the mountains take it away. We don't get a whole lot of weather because they just don't know what to do with our valley. It's great. The winds is the thing in this equation, but I do like that. Parking. Wait, okay. I got one more thing. Parking is the biggest like NIMBY nonsense thing that you'll ever hear about when you talk about housing. And the reason why is winter. Because when the snow comes, where do you put it? And it's really city management. So at least that's the city side. And then the countryside, right? So if you are somebody that has a lot of vehicles or something like that, a lot of the roads don't have shoulders. So there's nowhere to park your vehicles on like the town's property, right? Like there's no off the shoulder. So I'd say parking is also another weird one, which you're from California specifically here, but parking is definitely a thing that people are really excited to talk to you about. It's got space for 4 cars. I remember I listed one single family home my entire career, and the owner was like, I bought it because I could walk downtown and it had four parking spaces. And I was like, is that really the selling point? He was like, yes. So that's what we led with. Room for 4 cars. And so that's might be a weird one where you're like, parking, why is that such a big deal? It is a huge deal in regards to rentals. So
I've actually seen that in a lot of the listings. It states how many cars, how many spots for parking. I've seen it quite a bit. So yeah, that's
why, it's the biggest thing. It's the biggest thing everyone talks about. Well, I didn't know it was that important until I moved here, but I come from Indiana. Things like we have big shoulders on the road, even though you're in a big city, there's a lot of parking space. No, parking is a big deal. And if it's not explicitly stated, maybe you should ask why.
Okay, good. Good to know.
You have. And then maybe like the dirty secret is there is none. You're going to be on the street. Or like we manage properties in downtown Concord and they take away parking on the city streets, or they'll add metered parking where there wasn't. And so you're like, actually your closest parking is metered parking a block away.
Oh, that stinks.
But then they just got rid of it. I have no clue what Concord's doing. But that one's fun. We have one in downtown where they had a parking space right in front of the house that got taken away. Then it turned into metered parking a block away. And now it's not pay to park. So,
Boy.
parking.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I've got like 7 more minutes to fill. This is fun. Mel, do you have any thoughts about renting? You've been so quiet.
No, I didn't rent when I first came here. We bought, but we did. My husband and I stayed in a friend's spare bedroom for 3 days while we looked for a house, and I highly recommend that. And then you can meet a bunch of people and go to all the meetups. And it was great. You know, it was a whirlwind 3 day, you know, house looking festival, but that was, oh my gosh, like 12, 13 years ago at this point. So the housing market has changed a lot.
And we say it's changed a lot, but like honestly, we've been in a shortage of the recommended supply for decades. So like maybe it was like 10 more houses a month, right? Were coming on the market than they are right now. Or
Right,
it's
yes.
easier to make an offer and get them to pay your closing costs. But the supply isn't so much different. But you had to do a lot
Yeah,
of
we were also looking like the entire bottom of the state. Back then, we also used, you know, Porcupine real estate, and they were very accommodating and drove all over the state. And it just so happened that where we picked, I'm in the Monadnock region. And so it's like on the cusp of Merrimack and Monadnock in the middle. And we just happened to fall in love with it. So when we did happen to move, we moved one town over.
Oh, that's cool. From where you were visiting with your friend?
Oh no, he was in Concord. So
Oh.
we moved to the Monadnock region, and we just loved it so much we stayed here. So we're about 45 minutes from Keene, 45 to Manchester, 45 to Nashua.
Okay.
It's perfect.
Zach, are you living country life? You said you're a country bumpkin.
Well, I grew up in New Hampshire. I'm a New Hampshire native, so I grew up in Stratford, New Hampshire. It's actually where the Independence Inn is now. It's a great Free Stater owned restaurant, but it's yeah, it's sort of in the middle of nowhere. It takes an hour to get to Manchester, 45 minutes to Portsmouth, and about 30 to Concord. It's sort of yeah, to the right, it's sort of below the lakes region. So it's in that area where it's, yeah, you can reach all the main areas, but it's also nice and rural where you can look down the road and not really see any houses. So it's like that perfect balance where you're not too far, but it's like 15 minutes to the store, 15, 20 minutes to the nearest store.
I can like see the number of windows, the number of homes in like a 5-mile radius in Stratford. Like I can see that's where I live. 1/10 of an acre, surrounded by other people on a 1/10 of an acre.
Yeah, it's a big difference for sure. Well, there's definitely a lot of these rural communities in New Hampshire. Since New Hampshire is about 83% forested, there is a lot of rural communities, especially with the zoning regulations too, where they want X amount of acres for frontage or feet for frontage and, you know, minimum size lots. Like I was looking to build in Candia and they want 200 feet of frontage and then they want 3 acres of land. And there was also setbacks and it got complicated fast, but it was yeah, these communities, they care about the character in the town.
Manchester is proposing a new ADU on Tuesday to make it more beneficial, but it's still got ridiculous stipulations, right? Like you can't build the ADU in the front yard. Well, what if that's all of the yard, right? Like what if that's where the sewer system was on the back alley, so all they have is front yard? Now that can't become, it's fine. Local control at its finest. That's where all the rules come from. So that's also the benefit. And, you know, that's also where, well, and on this high note, you know, some towns are trying to make it harder to make a short-term or even like a seasonal rental as possible. So we're going to start to see that legislated because of court cases for like Plymouth, I think, is one of them that's got the ban on, it was trying to ban, or Conway, sorry, trying to ban short-term rentals. And And so again, that's anything a 30-day or less lease. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, New Hampshire is very decentralized. A lot of the towns have their own rules, where statewide there's a lot of it is delegated to the towns. So there's a lot of reasons to join local government or to get to know your representatives and really be able to do what you see as best fit for your community. Which, especially in these low population towns, you can really move a lot just for getting involved.
I think it's even just like knowing what the values are of the town that you're moving into, right? Like, what is their planning council up to? Oh, I'm not interested in that at all, right? Like maybe they are moving the needle to smaller lot size or something like that, and you're not interested, right? Like, I love my house because it has a minimum, 20-acre lot size. That's what I want my neighborhood to look like. I think that's the benefit of renting too, is you have more time to sit and research, like, what if we did buy in Amherst? What if we did buy in New London? What if we did buy in Chichester? What does that mean from a local level? Because there is so much local control. And so that's also why I think that renting before you buy, it kind of gives you a little bit more time than saying like, oh, we ended up in the perfect area for us. A little bit less time. A little bit less time to make those decisions could help you make a bad decision. So more time, better decisions.
Especially in a high pressure market like the one we're in now, where you may not really have much time to think about it just because there's multiple offers on the table. So
And
yeah,
maybe
being here helps.
my favorite path is the house hacking to single family, right? So, oh, hey, I didn't actually really mind, living in a multifamily. What if we bought a multi? It's a little bit different of a market to buy a multi than to compete with everyone for a single. And then you use the equity in that multi to buy yourself that single family. No one's going to kick you out of your own rental, that kind of thing. That's really what I encourage for everyone. I love house hacking. So we did it. We made it to 7.
A good job. Yeah, thank you, Brittany. You definitely provided a lot of insight.
If you have any questions, be ping at ledgeviewcommercial.com. Again, we don't necessarily service the entire state, but if you're looking for resources, if you're looking for some assistance, we've got an excellent customer service team throughout my entire office. If I can't help you, I'll direct you to one of them, and they'll give you some of their time just to help.
Yep, and Porcupine Real Estate, we work with movers all the time, and we can direct you to the resources that you need for making your move. And of course, we have all the knowledge, expertise, and resources to help you. We have the local guides, which we can set you up with for all the different regions, and we can help you set up a search to find new properties as they come on the market for the criteria that you want, and to help really narrow that down. So get your rental through Ledgeview, and then we can help you find your house.
Thank you so much. All the information was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope I hope he gets a good job offer soon.
Thank you. So do I.
Fingers crossed.
All right. Hopefully we'll be getting in touch with you.
Well, it was beautiful because the snow was beautiful, but
well, and that's the thing. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to, is like, okay, how bad is it? But it was gorgeous. We went on a little hike. We just went on like a little hike in the snow, and it was really beautiful.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It was great.
Yeah, that was the worst storm all year.
Yeah. I mean, you did miss the -40 that we had a lot of burst pipes, but it's super not common here. It's my first winter in New Hampshire that we experienced that. In Indiana, it was way more common. So we did have one really freaking cold weekend. February. That was it. And the snow.
I like to say, if you can't love New Hampshire at its worst, then you don't deserve it at its best.
There you go.
Right now, the lilacs are starting to they're my favorite. So now my ugly, scraggly branches all have beautiful little green leaves. I feel like every day you walk out, the tulips are starting to burst. We have real seasons here. We have all of them, all 4 of them. It's wonderful.
Very distinct as well. And then mud season, so 5 seasons.
No, okay. We haven't really gotten the spring mud season, so it's okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. Then that's just beach weather. Then you just drive a little bit farther away and you just go to a beach. That's my.
Yeah, it's just a
solution.
running joke that we have 5 seasons. It's a mud season.
I feel like there's 2 though, like it cherry picks like in the spring and it goes in the fall too. All right, it's been excellent. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for attending.
Thank you. Take care.